Hello, everyone. I'm Steve DiMeglio from Golfweek, and we're joined by the Zing, Paul Azinger, major champion, winning captain for the Ryder Cup team, winning player for the Ryder Cup team, and now one of the best voices in all of golf as one of the best analysts in all of golf. So, Zing, you played some golf today. So, how have you been handling this break caused by the COVID-19 global pandemic?
Well, first, it was a heck of a nice introduction on your part. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been okay for us because we don't live anywhere near a big city, and I've been able to stay outside and play golf and go out in the boat and stuff like that. So it's actually been quite easy for all of us here. My family's been healthy, which is great, and I don't know anybody that's gotten it yet. So I've been very lucky in that regard.
And what do you miss the most about being out of that booth and just not being able to go out to that golf tournaments and do what you do really well?
Well, I love calling golf. It's a kind of a it's just love for the sport. I can't tell you how much I love the game of golf and how much I love watching it. I love playing the game. I've gotten very comfortable in the booth with the guys there at NBC. It took me a minute, I'll tell you that. It's been a stressful year. Last year was, but everything was familiar. The first few events this year, we were really getting amped up for the Players Championship. And I started thinking about, just don't we're going to do this podcast today about all the heartache and heartbreak and people pouring their hearts and souls into those events. In sports, I mean, we've had plenty of heartache to go around with all the people dying. But with respect to sports, there's so much effort put into putting on a golf tournament, and the Players Championship was ready to rock. It was spectacular, and just all the heartache and wasted kind of energy, really, and time put into that, and to have it not come off was just a very sad thing. It's just golf, it's just sport, and now it looks like a race to see which is going to get back on first, and maybe it'll be golf.
Zing, during this break time, have you learned anything about yourself?
I just don't let myself get bored, I guess, as much as anything. I think self-isolating isn't too bad. I've done a lot of work around the house. I know I'm neater than I think I am. I can clean if I want to, and that's been one thing. But I think in terms of life in general, your mortality, that sort of thing, and how much control do we really have in this world? And I think a lot of that stuff we begin to ponder.
Well, there was another time where you were thinking about your mortality when you beat back cancer in
Yeah.
late 1990s, early 2000s. Are there any similarities? I mean, sort of like the unknown future as you go forward. I would imagine you were basically sheltered at home during that time. Are there any similarities between that? And I don't want to make light of beating cancer.
Right.
Are there any similarities between the two?
I probably just the whole fear factor, the fear of the unknown. I can imagine. When I first heard the word that you have cancer, immediately it's I drew a similarity to hearing there's a virus going around and we're going to all have to shelter in place. I mean, it's a scary thing. The cancer immediately was, well, how do you treat it? And when I found out what the treatment was, I knew it was a big deal, Steve. So, but this, we just tried to avoid the treatment. And so healthy people had to shelter in place, and that's just never happened before. But for a long time there, Steve, I think all of us wondered, could we get it? Could it make us sick enough that we could succumb? And that's just a terrible feeling. That is similar to the feeling I had when I was told I had cancer, for sure.
Well, Zing, let's talk about a little snafu you ran into at the Honda Classic when you were talking about Tommy Fleetwood trying to win his first win on the PGA Tour. And can you explain? I think it was that word, that tour. When you said that tour, it's different. You have to win on the PGA Tour. And you became, punching bag with some of your friends. Ian Poulter took shots at you. Can you explain what you really were trying to say? And do you think you'll be bulletin board material during the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be some bulletin board material for him at the Ryder Cup. I really respect all wins. We'll just say that. There's a couple players. Portugal somehow thinks I was disrespecting Westwood's career, but there's not a competitive equivalent to all wins. And this was at the very beginning of the telecast, and my goal in some respects, is to try to draw the viewer in here. And my goal is always to make the player look good. I'm not out to make the player look bad. I want them to look good. And something, I don't know, in me just came to that point where I just said, you can win on this tour or that tour, that global game, that European tour. That's kind of how I talk. I try to use good grammar when I'm in the booth, but I failed big time on that one. And it didn't come off, quite as I'd hoped. But the purpose of that is to try to draw the viewer in and let the viewer know this is a huge tournament for Tommy Fleetwood to win. And I wanted him to win, to tell you the truth, because I love Tommy Fleetwood like everybody else. And if you think about it, the way it came right down to the very end, didn't it? The last shot for Tommy Fleetwood and the value and the importance and the significance, what that would mean if he won. And, I always say, Steve, these guys choke for two things, cash and prestige. The PGA Tour has the most of both. So, yes, you have to win on that PGA Tour, except I said that European Tour. And, it's insulting. I really didn't mean for it to come out quite like that. But the whole point was that I have to draw the viewer in a little bit there. And I set up the show. This is going to be huge for Tommy. And guess what? It came right down to the last shot. And I think people were on the edge of their seats seeing if Tommy was going to pull that off or not. And it turned out he didn't. And it'll probably be a little harder for him next time. And as long as it didn't make Tommy mad, which it hasn't, because it wasn't personal, or Westwood, who, look, Westwood's had a better career than me. But he knows that, there's not always a competitive equivalent to some of those wins. And I love Westwood. I respect him, and I respect all those guys. So if that was a big leap, I think, for players to take, that I didn't respect what they were doing, or that tour or those wins. I do. I know how hard it is to win, and that came out wrong. But in the end, my job is to try to help it be a little bit interesting, cue the viewer in, and that's what I tried to do there. And it is what it is now.
Can you talk about the first time you played with Tiger, but what it was like, and you saw him at his best?
When Tiger first showed up, he had just won the U.S. Am there, and he was on the tarmac in Milwaukee, and Stewart and I had done a pro-am somewhere together, and we met him on the tarmac. And I can remember, we congratulated Tiger, just a kid, and on his big U.S. Amateur win. It was 3 in a row. And I remember Payne spent about 5 minutes trying to talk Tiger into turning pro. And I thought that was pretty funny. We kept saying, yeah, leave some of that money for us. Just joking. Little did we know what was about to happen. In 97, I think he'd already won in 96. In 97, I got paired with him the second round at Augusta. And I have to tell you, I had still at that point never seen Tiger hit a shot. And I went the first hole with him, and he drove it in the fairway and down the green and made a par, but I didn't see either one of those shots. And on the second tee at Augusta, the second day, I remember looking at my caddy and just saying, I never seen this guy hit a shot. I'm going to watch this. And he hit the tee shot, Steve. I'll never forget it. It just looked like a home run leaving the ballpark. It was about 5 yards to the right of the tree line and about 3 or 4 feet below this tall stand of pines, and just left like a rocket. It carried the bunker on the right and was miles down there. And he hit 7-iron, I think, to the green. I remember looking at my caddy, and I just went, holy crap. He ended up shooting 65 or 6 that day. It was like a piece of cake for him. And I knew he was going to do something. I certainly had no idea he'd be that special. But he asked me about him and how good he was, as a player throughout his career. To watch that whole thing unfold, I think it was about 2001 when we realized that we couldn't beat him. I think most of the players realized we couldn't beat him. It was after the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. Really, that was the one. But that stretch of 3 majors in a row, when he won at Pebble and then won the Open Championship, won the PGA, then an 8-month stretch. Remember, they said he was in a slump. He came out of that slump at Bay Hill. And that's when I think everybody realized when he won the Masters, oh my gosh, we're watching something that we never thought we'd see.
Now I'm hoping you can talk to me about your love of the Ryder Cup. What was it about playing for the red, white, and blue that got you going?
Just the whole patriotism aspect of it. I think, Seve had that patriotism for Europe, and just turned out to be one of those things. You know, you got the flag on your back and off you go. I got really lucky at the Ryder Cup because I paired against Europe's best players all the time. You know, I got to play Seve, and I got to play Jose and Faldo and Wisdom. You know, I saw their best players at the Ryder Cup.
Well, seeing I've taken up plenty of your time, and you filled up that time with a lot of great stories.
Thank you, Steve. You're the man, buddy. I wish we could talk back and forth a little differently than this. See you, buddy.
Thanks, big man.